Hey guys, I'm hanging out in Brooklyn and we're looking at the Riese Müller Roadster models, specifically the Mixte Roadster Touring. Okay, this would be the Touring HS if it had the high speed motor, but what we're looking at here is the Bosch Performance Line CX High Torque, and this does have EMTB mode. I'm gonna get to that a little bit later, but I just wanna call out this nice graphic. I mean, look at that. Does that remind you of anyone's face? A boxer maybe? Mike Tyson, that's right. That's what I'm thinking. It's kind of neat, actually, for Riese Müller tends to have some funky colors, but pretty like solid lines. And this is the first time I've seen like a little bit of like flair going on. I really like it. I'm here with the owner of Propel Bikes in Brooklyn. This is Chris Nolte. How's it going?
Doing well.
Dude, I'm excited to be out here with you because we can compare these back to back and talk about some of the differences and just really zoom in on the specs. We're hanging out in one of these nicer neighborhoods. I forget what this is called. Do you know where we're at?
Yeah, this is Clinton Hill in Brooklyn.
Clinton Hill. It's been fun riding around, some smoother streets, and definitely a lot of starts and stops, some construction. E-bikes are really, great for this kind of thing. And I love the comfort that these specific models are offering. So we have an SR Suntour NCX suspension fork. It's not an air fork. It's not like super long travel, but it's definitely a step up. We do have preload adjust on this side with the compression / lockout clicker on the right. I like that it matches the frame, in this case the black. You can see over there with the metallic green, it's the same black suspension fork. So they've done what they can, and I'm really taken by the black frames because the wires blend in this case they're internally routed mostly. You can see them down here externalized. Riese Müller tends to have a blend of internal and external. I think some of that's for serviceability. But the Bosch motor casing here, it's sort of a dark gray with those black stickers, and it blends in with the black. Same with the battery casing. It's got a little bit of gray and black. Fenders, these are SKS plastic fenders. They're gonna be pretty durable. They're not gonna get bent or rusty like aluminum or steel. They do have a couple of extra support struts, so there's not as much rattling happening. They hug the wheels pretty closely, and the rear fender is neat because it actually has an integrated LED light. And that's, safety is a big consideration when you're out on an e-bike, especially if it's black. These tires don't have the full reflective sidewall stripes, but I believe the graphic is reflective. So it says Schwalbe, this is G1 tires, and that's gonna shine a little bit. These are 28 by 1.5 inch. So they're a little bit narrower than some of the other like cruiser or plus size tires that we're seeing on mountain bikes, and even, again, cruisers, a little bit more plush, but they're gonna be more efficient, and they've got that semi-knobby tread that's gonna help you go from rough terrain to sandy, or maybe even through a little bit of water or snow. And then again, those fenders keeping you nice and clean. I like that these rims double wall, they're reinforced, they have those eyelets right there, 14 gauge spokes, just a little bit thicker. Got quick release on the front and a through axle. Okay, so this is 15 millimeters. It's gonna be a little bit stiffer, 100 millimeter hub spacing on that. And then we have, I think it's like a tapered head tube, so 1.1 to 1.5 inches at the bottom. That's something you'd normally see on like mountain bikes, but it's becoming more popular on electric bikes. I think it's part of what makes these speed pedelec ready, right? So this is the 20 mile per hour version, but when you start getting a little bit faster, you wanna have that stiffness, that stability, so you don't get wobble, flex. Anyway, the headset's pretty cool too. It's got this block lock, so you can't actually turn the handlebars any further than that. It automatically stops, and that helps to avoid any damage that the crown would create on your down tube. A little bit of a rise in that stem. It's adjustable. It's got a 20 millimeter riser right there, so you could flip this if you wanted to be more aggressive. You could take out the riser. There's some adjustability. Flat bar, these ribbed grips from Herman's, and then the Magura MT4 hydraulic brake levers. These are 4-finger, okay, so you can really bear down on them if you want, and it's got that little ball at the end, which is a requirement for speed pedelecs in Europe. I'm guessing that they carry over some of these components between the two models, so it's really set up. And this year for 2018 with a brighter light as well. That's Bosch Müller IQX 100 lux, so very, very bright. It's going to point where you steer, and I like that it's mounted to, again, the crown or near that headset area versus down here on the bridge, which would kind of vibrate. So the lights are sprung on the bike, and that's great. Coming back to that rear light, I'm going to go ahead and turn on the display. Comes on pretty quickly, and then we press the light button. There we go, lights on. Not bad, right? It's a little bit low and stuff, but that's kind of nice because, this is the other light integration. If you opt for this rack time rack, it's an option that you can pay a little bit more for. There's sort of a different light style, and that might be something that you choose when you get the bike. A lot of times these Riese Müller models are kind of built to order, right? And there's a little bit of a wait time to actually get it into your shop.
That's right, yeah. And the nice thing about that is you can get it exactly how you want it, but it does take a little while longer, but you get a bike that's built specifically for you, which is quite a nice thing.
Kind of like the latest and greatest stuff too.
Yeah, absolutely. The battery's not sitting in the warehouse or something like that.
Yeah. Or even the little parts. Like there have been a couple little differences between.
Yeah, that does happen sometimes too. That there might be some updates in the parts, say like the saddle or whatever the case may be. It's just whatever's the best and the newest that they have available at that time. They might make slight changes.
I appreciate that. It's there's the wait time. These bikes do cost a little bit more. This is $3,879. Does that sound right? Yeah. So that's the CX, the 20 mile per hour version. If you want to go up to the speed version, it's $4,079. So $200 difference between those motors. The CX puts out 75 newton meters of peak torque, whereas the Bosch Performance Line Speed puts out about 63. So a little bit less peak torque, but a higher maximum speed. And when you get above 20 miles per hour, it's going to be pulling down on that battery a little bit faster because of air resistance. So you might want to think about your range and stuff. They are using the new Bosch PowerPack 500, whereas opposed to the 400, you're getting 25% higher energy capacity. It's about 5.8 pounds, so it was only 0.4, 0.3 pounds heavier than the older ones. They are backwards compatible, so you could swap them out. And some of the Riese Müller bikes offer dual battery setup. I don't think that's the case on this Mixte. What do you think about the Roadster, the full?
Yeah, not on these models, but they are one of the companies that are known for dual battery option. But the Roadster is a little more focused on kind of keeping it lightweight and simple, and so they're just single batteries.
And relatively affordable, for them, right? The Riese Müller, it's a higher quality bike. A lot of the componentry is spec'd up, including we've got a Shimano Dior 10-speed rear cassette, 11 to 42 teeth, so it's a really broad range, and it's even got the Shadow Plus clutch right here, so you can click that in the up position if you're riding over rough terrain, and you might not get as much chain bounce and slap. They've got an alloy chainring protector up here that doubles as a guide, so you really shouldn't be having an issue with that chain flopping off, and a nice slap guard there, so your paint's going to stay in good shape. They've even got an integrated cafe lock over here, and it's key to like. So this is the Abus Shield 5650. Chris, maybe if you're on that side, you can go ahead and, I'm turning the key, and then that rod slides through and it locks in place, and that's neat. You can leave your bike hanging out on the curb for just a few minutes and feel relatively secure with, someone's not going to be able to at least hop on and ride this thing off. The bike weighs about 48.3 pounds.
Right.
And we are looking at the small. This comes in 2 frame sizes, whereas the high step comes in 3. So you've got a lot of different options, and I really like this one. I mean, even as a guy, there's sort of the step through. The Mixte frames, again, if you have a hip or knee issue, picking your foot up that high versus having to lift it really high on that one, especially if your rack is loaded up. I mean, imagine having gear on the back of this and you're trying to swing your leg over. That's a bit of a reach, especially if you want to get that full leg extension and you're raising the seat a little bit like we have here. I do appreciate that this does have a Satori suspension seat post, about 50 millimeters of travel. This is 31.6 millimeter seat post diameter, so you could swap that out with your own, but I actually think Satori does a pretty good job, and it's adjustable. Right now it's a little tight for me. We could loosen it up and I'd get more comfort.
Right. It might work a little bit better for me than you at 135 pounds, but yeah, it's not a bad setup. I know body float is certainly really popular for e-bikes, but out of the box, I mean, it's a pretty comfortable bike.
It's nice, yeah. It feels like you've kind of got everything you need. This is what I would consider to be feature complete. You got the lights, you got the locks, you got the fenders, and you've got a really good drive system that's low, it's centered, it's a longer range, so I estimate 25 to 75 miles per charge on this, and it really depends on all those factors, like how heavy you are, what the terrain is like, and everything. Do you remember the frame sizes specifically? Is this a 43, and then there's...
This one's a 45 centimeter, and then the larger size in the Mixte is a 53 centimeter.
Okay, there we go. Thank you, Chris. I appreciate it.
It's 18 and 21 inch.
So we were back at the shop earlier, and I was measuring everything, like standover height, length of this bike, width, but I've only measured the small. So keep that in mind. And then I have reviewed the high step model before. It's just 2017, and they didn't have this color. The one I reviewed was like blue. Now they've got this really awesome metallic green, just beautiful, nice. And I mean, that's going to be, it's going to help you be seen, be a little bit sportier.
And one of the changes you'll see for 2018 is the frame. They changed it slightly, and one of the big differences is the tubing is a little bit different, a little bit more modern design components. And so the battery, they kind of sunk it into the tube a little bit more compared to the 2017 version, which was just on the standard round tubing.
Great attention to detail. I remember the other one was really round, like all the tubing was just straight up round, which looked okay, but this has a little bit of a slimmer profile from the side and then brings that battery down a little bit, kind of merges it with the frame. So anyway, let's come back to the Mixte here. I mentioned the hydraulic disc brakes. They have adjustable reach levers, and Magura does a really great job. I mean, there's really smooth braking activation because it's pushing down into that piston instead of like in, as I understand it. Then we've got the 180 millimeter rotors with those big dual piston calipers right there. I was mentioning the through axle up front. The back just has a traditional, it's like 135 hub spacing, 9 millimeter skewer with quick release. So both wheels are quick release. The battery's quick release. It's easy to take this off and charge it separately from the bike, or just reduce the weight by 5.8 pounds. And then the light, you can see on the side here, it's got some visibility. So in addition to the reflective sidewalls, well, the graphics at least, you've got a little bit of light shining out and just keeping you seen. Yeah, I mean, I'm feeling like we've hit most of the specs on this. Maybe a little bit more of a description around that motor. So it's measuring your rear wheel speed, pedal cadence, and pedal torque more than 1,000 times per second. It's just super responsive. And this chainring here is a little bit smaller than you might be used to, 17 tooth. It spins 2.5 revolutions for every single crank revolution. So that gives some efficiency to the motor, maybe a little bit of a mechanical advantage, but there is a gearbox in there. It's like a reduction gear. So even when you're riding this without power, that chainring is spinning 2.5 times for every revolution. A couple of people have said, oh, there's some resistance there. You have to work a little harder. Yeah, a little bit. I think that's true, but it doesn't impact your coasting very much. And frankly, this is still one of the most, I think, efficient and most reliable motors. Chris, your shop, you pretty much only carry Bosch at this point. Can you just chime in? I mean, I'm trying not to be too promotional, but it's like, why? Why do you only carry Bosch?
Yeah, so we have a lot of experience with e-bikes. We've dealt with a lot of different systems. And
you've been around since what, like 2012 or something?
2011 we started, and you've seen a lot of different things come and go, and you feel kind of confident with a system like Bosch that they're going to be around. I mean, they've been around over 100 years now, and you see a real commitment to them, not just in the quality of the products, but actually the quality and the service after sales, which is a really big deal. And you don't find that as much with some of the other companies. Unfortunately, they're just not really working as hard to train, service people and setting up this repair network. So wherever you are in the country, you know that you can get some service on your bike, and really wherever you are in the world, for the most part, there's a lot of coverage.
And that's an interesting point. So people have asked me before, like, well, you can't fly with batteries. It's a lithium ion, it's high power. But you could bring your bike, and you can easily find a Bosch battery pack all over Europe and in the United States, and you can just plug one of those packs right in. Absolutely. The backwards compatibility we're talking about, so Power Pack 400 or 500 works on this bike. And Bosch has this commitment to their products that's like at least 5 years, and I think they even get closer to 10. So they're going to be making this, supporting it.
It's something that kind of came from the automotive industry, where it's actually a requirement in Germany that once you stop production on a product, you have to support it for 7 years after.
Oh.
And it seems like they're going to kind of carry that same sort of strategy over into the e-bike space, which is really refreshing, considering we've seen people where, a model's retired and then a year later you have trouble getting parts for it. Yeah. To me, that's really silly and really not right by the customer or by the shop, and we don't want to deal with that.
So you pay a little bit more for Riese Müller because it's this high quality brand and there's all this customization you can do, and you pay a little bit more maybe for Bosch, but you're getting something that's going to last. It's pretty well supported. So okay, you also get this 2-year comprehensive warranty on all the Bosch systems, which is pretty nice. I'm gonna unlock this frame lock again. There we go. We're ready to ride. Can I hand these keys back to you?
Sure.
So this has one of my favorite display systems on it. This is the Bosch Intuvia. Nice big display, especially if you're sitting way up here. You can still see it. You can angle it to reduce glare. You can even remove it. So when you get to the rack, maybe you're parking this at the bike rack and you're going into work or school, you can take your battery in to charge it. You take the display off so it doesn't get, you know, sun damaged or a lot of water or even scratched. You come back out, you click it in. Maybe you've got your phone mounted up here, or an MP3 player, an extra light or something. You can run those right off of this display panel. It's got a micro USB port right there. I think it's like 5 volts, 1 amp. You know, it's decent. It's enough to maintain. I've actually tried it with my own iPhone, and it worked pretty well. But you don't have to reach all the way in here to mess with the display. They've got this nice button pad out to the left. So the first thing you do is power it on. It comes to life very quickly. So here we go. I've got 1 out of 5 battery bars, getting pretty low on this thing. Speed in the middle, and then we've got a little power chart and assist levels. And there are 4 assist levels: one at Eco, Tour, Sport, and Turbo. Turbo is one of my favorite, but it's also kind of the loudest. And coming just 1 step down from Turbo, that's that EMTB mode. So watch right here. EMTB. And this mode's really cool. Rather than being limited to 1 band of power, it kind of opens up the whole band, and it seems like it responds more to torque sensing. So if you're someone who doesn't want to mess around with buttons, you just want to ride, EMTB mode's going to give you like basically all the drive modes in one. And that's especially relevant to mountain bikers, but I think it's also satisfying for regular street riding too. And then down here on the bottom, we've got all these different readouts you can cycle through with this I button. So we start out with the odometer, trip distance, clock, max speed, average speed, trip time, and then range. And range is really cool, especially when you're getting low on that battery, because it's hard to tell, like, okay, well, 1 tick out of 5, that's 20%. Are we full 20%, or are we at like 2%? I'm not really sure, but at least I know that the range is giving me about 4 miles in sport mode, and if I arrow down to eco mode, well, now 11. Okay, so I know I can get back, if I stay in eco mode, I'm not going to get quite as much assistance, but I'm not going to run completely out.
Right.
You're dealing with like an almost 50-pound bike. It's kind of nice to be able to plan your route that way. So, you know, range estimate's cool, and it is dynamic. So it's actually been measuring my last like mile of riding. It's looking at the battery. It's looking at assist. This is one of the better systems that way. And, you know, coming back to how responsive the motor is, the motor even has shift detection. So, you know, when you're dealing with 10 different sprockets and a full spread right there of you know, gears, the chain and the sprockets and the derailleur, they all take some wear when you shift the gears, and especially on a CX motor, it's giving you high torque. So that shift assist, I think it's kind of listening for how hard you're pushing, and there's these kind of the micro gaps, so that if you're shifting, it kind of eases back a little bit, and that chain can jump without really, you know, banging as much, really mashing.
Right. Yeah, and that kind of speaks to some of the advancements that Bosch has in the sensors. And it's something that you really will only find with the Bosch system, because that's what actually, outside of the e-bike industry, that's one of their strengths. And actually the iPhone has Bosch sensors, Google Car uses Bosch sensors.
Really?
And there's a lot of different things outside of, you know.
That's interesting. I had no idea that they were in all of those different devices. It's kind of neat to hear. Here's our trigger shifters, and one of the things I like about this particular design is that they give you, it's like a forward or back on the little one, and then there's a 3-click, watch this, 1, 2, 3 on the big one. So I feel like this is one of the best trigger shifters that I've seen. I think we've pretty much covered everything. Should we get on this thing and ride, Chris, or am I forgetting something?
Just one other thing, this update for 2018 that we didn't discuss is there's a front carrier that's now available, which is pretty special. And it's something proprietary to Riese Müller. It's not on the bike right now. These are very early, actually. But basically, it's a metal rack with wooden slats, and it's a really nicely designed piece. Huh. And we're pretty excited about it. I think a lot of people are going to really appreciate it.
And I think we were talking about how this mounts earlier. You know, the rear rack, they have their special mounting points here. Let's actually go over to the high step to show this. Yeah, look at that. It's got like double bolts on the inside of the dropout area, and then it's mounting up to the fender. So that's going to add even more. I guess it's going to be a little quieter. It's going to give you up to 44 pounds of support for doing panniers or a little trunk bag. What were you saying, Chris?
Yeah, so underneath here, there's actually a metal support which runs underneath the fender.
Is that what's going on?
Really clean lines, and yeah, just keeps it really clean and still durable.
Huh. Okay. Yeah. You know what? Thank you for pointing that out. I hadn't looked. There's like this big black metal thing under the fender that's mounted right here. So I was kind of like, wow, I guess they're getting enough support here, but it's a plastic fender. No, there's extra metal, so that's going to add a tiny bit of weight too. Very cool, very cool. And then the way that the rack is mounted, I can't say for sure, but it looks like it's mounted to the headset, and it might turn with you a little bit versus being completely rigid on the frame. So one thing you might want to keep an eye out for is if that's really loaded up and then you turn or you kind of park the bike, the basket could, you could dump your load a little bit, or it could add a little bit of weight to your steering. You have any thoughts on that, or is it that's just...
Yeah, that's right. And I think that is actually one of the benefits of this blocking headset.
Oh.
So it doesn't turn too much. But yeah, and that's actually, there is a certain level of adjustment to that as well.
Cool. So you could keep it from dumping.
Right.
I didn't even think about that, man. That's really smart. Okay. Coming back to the ride test here. We mentioned the battery was we're at that 1 tick mark. This is what the charger looks like. It weighs about 1.7 pounds. It's one of the better chargers in my opinion because it puts out up to 4 amps, whereas most electric bike chargers only put out, 2 or maybe 3. It's got a proprietary plug. It's the same plug on the battery as on the bike, so you don't have to have an adapter or anything. Yeah, and it's just relatively compact. It works out pretty well. Okay, guys. I'm mounted up. I'm in Eco, but for this test, I want to take it all the way up to Turbo. So we're only got 3 miles. I'm going to ride around a little bit and try to show you how quickly it responds and just what it's like. Okay, you see there's like a little arrow that was popping in a minute ago, and that's a shift recommendation. So it's actually telling me that I should shift gears and try to give that motor a little bit of a mechanical advantage, because right there I was reaching this almost 120 RPM max support, and that's something that's nice about the Bosch motor. 120 RPM is fast. You saw me, I was spinning pretty fast. For someone with sensitive knees like me, that's really comfortable versus like this lumbering, hard-working type of a feel. So yeah, I'm glad that we had that experience a second ago. Now I'm going to do some shifting. So there's the little, there we go. Saw the arrow for a second. Doing pretty well. Just one side on those nice brakes. And now I'm in too high of a gear, so we'll get shift recommendation. It'll maybe be saying, hey, shift down. Yeah, there it was. Little arrow. You're filming and riding around. I'm trying to do my best to be safe, but you do see that arrow occasionally. And for someone who's really trying to maximize their range when you're almost out of batteries, listening and kind of looking at that arrow is a nice little extra. It's another thing that a lot of other systems don't have. Okay guys, from here you can see the side of the motor. Watch that chainring spinning up, spinning down. It's really responsive. I love the way it's set up. The CX motor does produce a bit more noise, but you're getting that extra power and stuff. I'm also going to shift through those 10 gears, give you some idea of that shift detection. And I do have the Shadow Plus clutch in the down position, so it's a little bit smoother. Since this is a very smooth street, it's going to be easier shifting. might have noticed that the motor kind of faded out. I was able to top 20 miles per hour pretty easily, and then we're coasting down a bit of a hill there too. Just really smooth. I like that they've got this black matching slap guard, because in the down position, you know, there is going to be a little bit more chain bounce, and these frames are so beautiful, especially if you get kind of the green or the white, and even the black. You don't want to have silver marks just kind of showing up there. Hey guys, we're in Clinton Hills. It's kind of a historic area of Brooklyn. I'm going to follow Chris around. Just enjoy this. You know, there's the suspension there, so hopefully there's not a lot of vibration. We're going to find a nice place to hang out. Well, Chris, it was a lot of fun.
All right.
Had a great time looking at these two bikes back to back. I think that's it, you guys. Again, for all the measurements, some photos, some comments and stuff, I'll see you back at ElectricBikeReview.com. Of course, have fun out there. Ride safe.